I first found Dr. Tara Ruana while scrolling Instagram. Sometimes the algorithm gods simply know what they're doing. Dr. Tara is an Ontario based naturopathic doctor focusing on adolescent healthcare. She's dispelling puberty myths and outdated thinking when it comes to the tween years. While she helps all kids and their parents in her practice, she niched down her Instagram page to focus on female puberty changes. This interview speaks in the gender binary but acknowledges that not everybody falls into one of two categories. Please meet Dr. Tara Ruana. Thanks for being here. I love following you on Instagram, so this is awesome to get to speak with you.
Absolutely. I'm excited.
So tell me a little bit. I think the listeners might want to know, what is a naturopathic doctor and how does it fit in your focus on puberty education?
Yes. So I'm a naturopathic doctor here in Ontario, Canada. And what that means is that I focus my practice in tweens and teens. So helping them with a whole range of health concerns, really. I work a lot with periods, mental health, nutrition, acne, all of the health concerns that we really see pop up around those tween and teen years. So I help families through blood work, nutrition, different targeted supplements, lifestyle interventions to help mostly girls find health overall. And it's
Okay,
been so much fun.
that's great. You said mostly girls. I thought it was only girls. Are you expanding a little bit into teen boys, tween boys,
So
and
not
non-binary maybe as well? Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. In my private practice, I see everybody.
Okay.
But when it comes to my puberty education online, I keep that content focused on girls.
Okay. It's probably
Mhm.
better for the algorithm. So I totally
True.
get it. I totally get it. When you started, or when you were in your studies, when you were in med school and you were going through this, what did you see was missing from adolescent healthcare?
Yeah, actually, I feel like the reason that I really decided to niche in this area was actually through another company that I own. We do mental health work in schools. So we started this company I think about 3.5 years ago now. And at this point, we've worked with over 100 schools. But a few years ago, as we were doing this work, I really started to notice that these tween years were delicate.
Hmm.
And I started to really notice that this is the time when, especially girls, I mean, not just girls, but there's so much changing, right? And of course physical changes, but identity is changing, body image, and there's so much going on in these years. And I really started to realize in working with all these kids in schools that there's just so much more support that is needed at this age. And when I started to speak with parents about this, I realized that they're really looking for support as well. Puberty is challenging. It's hard to talk about. A lot of us as adults, we had, pretty negative experiences going through puberty or experiences where we just felt really lost, right? Like maybe parents weren't willing or had the knowledge to lead those conversations. And so I just started doing it and I've fallen in love with this age and this demographic and I just love it so much. I have so much fun doing this.
I think you're spot on because that's what I noticed as well when I was a
Mhm.
sex ed teacher in the classroom is a lot of times when it comes to sex education, we're so focused on teens and birth control and condoms and making sure you
Mhm.
don't get an unintended pregnancy and we kind of bypass a lot of that emotional, social, physical development that they really don't, things are happening and they don't have words to describe them. And so I think it's really great that you are doing this. And it must be easier to get into schools when you're saying we're focusing on puberty instead of focusing on saying sex or sexuality, which includes puberty, but it must be easier, right?
So actually the work that we do in schools, it's all focused on mental health
Oh,
education.
mental health. Okay.
Yep. It's all mental health education and but that so ties into puberty, right? Like there's so much going on in terms of mental emotional development and changes. And so we definitely sneak some puberty content into there too when we can.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe like this is a good segue into your actual empowered tween and teens
Mhm.
program, where you actually work with mothers and daughters who are in the stages of puberty. I mean, you talk about the stages, the 5 stages of puberty all the time on Instagram. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I'm sure there's a lot of moms that are listening that would love to know about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the 5 stages of puberty is the best way for us to really understand what's going on during this phase of life and also really help to prepare girls. I think for so many parents, puberty is such a mystery, right? All of a sudden she gets her period and you're like, okay, let's figure that out, right? But there's actually so much more to talk about to help her feel confident about, but way before her first period.
Mhm.
And so the 5 stages, it really sets the stage for how to have these conversations. And in the medical literature, they're called the Tanner stages of puberty. And it really focuses on the physical changes going through puberty. And the way that I like to talk about these stages is I like to also layer on all of the emotional changes that are going on because that is left out of the medical literature often when it comes to changes during puberty.
It's hard
But
to
what we
study the
know,
emotional side,
it
right? Like
is
that's what,
totally.
like it's easier to focus on the physical,
Oh,
but
yeah.
there's so much emotional. So yeah, keep going.
So
Sorry.
much. So much. And what we see too is that emotional changes happen even before physical changes happen in puberty. So in stage 2 of puberty, that's when the first physical signs of puberty, which is breast development, breast buds in 85% of girls, and pubic hair in 15% of girls, that happens in stage 2. But in stage 1, we already see mental, emotional mood shifts. So just so important and such a good way to have great conversations about puberty. And you mentioned my mom and daughter program, which I absolutely adore. I've been running that for I think 2.5 years now at this point, and it's a 6 module program. I've just recently transitioned it back to just an in-person program in Burlington, Ontario. And yeah, it's been incredible. And it's I think something that's really come out of that program is just really helping moms and daughters connect at this phase of life, which is the most important thing, right? And I think that when we can be vulnerable enough to talk about these things, because sometimes it's uncomfortable, right? To talk about breast development or vaginal discharge or periods or all the things that come with this phase of life, it creates so much more intimacy and trust in that relationship, which has been just a beautiful byproduct of this type of education.
Yeah, I mean, I have a daughter who is 9 years old, and I already saw the mood swings happen around the 8 years old mark. And I've been, probably more so than other parents, completely aware of
Mhm.
what was to come from having worked with so many kids. But having your own daughter go through it and being there when you're not at work, you're at home and you're like, why are you upset
Mhm.
about this?
Yeah.
And to really connect in and remind yourself she doesn't know what's going on. And I'm here to ground her and to help her through this and to give her the skills because
Mhm.
it's only going to multiply, right? It's,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such an important piece of it, right? I think so often when these mood changes happen, sometimes what happens is parents they can be a bit critical of that, right? And say things like, "Oh, why are you so moody? Oh, cut it out."
Mhm.
But girls are just as confused about these changes as parents are, right? For them, it also feels like it comes out of nowhere. After I've talked to so many girls where they say I totally snapped on my brother, but then afterwards I was like, why did I even do that, right? They're
Yeah.
just as confused about all the things that are happening. So exactly, it's meeting them with compassion in that moment and teaching them about these changes, how their brain is changing, how hormones are now in the picture, and that can make feelings a little bit more complicated and complex, right? And education is just such an important part of that. It's so empowering when girls can understand the changes that are happening.
I completely agree. I think it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about parents really honing in on what I call the intermediate age, 7, 8, and 9,
Mhm.
because it is a critical time where they're looking to their parent because they
Mhm.
still value what the parent says. I'm sure
Mhm.
you see this in your group. Like like maybe you could tell us like what is the number one concern of a tween in your group versus a parent versus the
Mm,
mom?
hmm.
Is it different?
Yeah.
Is it the same?
That's a great question. I'd say for girls, it's their first period. Every
Okay.
girl that I've worked with feels, I usually get two words, nervous and icky are the words that they use to
That's
describe
not
how they
bad,
feel.
actually.
Yeah, yeah. So I think for them, that's the biggest concern. But I think for parents, it's actually more around the connection. They really worry about becoming disconnected from their daughter. A lot
Mm.
of parents, they have some fear around the teen years. They worry about, yeah, just that connection, sort of just the two of them growing apart in ways. And what's been such a great part of the program is that they become so much more connected through this. Because as girls age, conversations have to change as well, right? We need to meet them where they're at as they grow, as they develop, as their brain changes, as their identity is forming, right? And so that can be a difficult shift for parents. And I often find too that there's some it's different for every parent, but sometimes there's a little bit of grief there as well as their daughter
Mm.
is going through puberty, as she's growing up. And that's okay. I always say to parents, you're allowed to feel that. Like that's totally fair. That's totally fair. And I think though sometimes those feelings stop them from having these important conversations with their daughter. So it's recognizing all the feelings that are coming up and then having a plan to really work through them and support them so that they can support their daughters through this.
I think this is why when your Instagram reel popped up on my feed, I was like, oh my gosh, I love her. I love everything
Oh.
that she's saying, and I need to talk to her because the plan is so good. The grief is so true. I don't think it hit me until I became a parent myself, and I have a 9-year-old, and it's one of those things where you're like, I really don't want you to get your period simply because I just know it's not that much fun and it's going to change, and you're going to then think, oh, can I play sports or can I do this? And I don't feel so good. And it's going to be a whole nother level. But at the same time, it's, the inevitable of what's going to happen. And I want to be there to support and help and find the right way to support my daughter. And so, yeah, I never thought of it as grief, but I can see that now. I can see
Hmm.
why they're saying that. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
It comes up a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think, I think this is a really good segue to what I notice from a lot of parents when it comes to the sex talks. When I talk about sex, a lot of parents, when I say, okay, the sex talks, it's like, it's not just explaining what is sex, it's talking about, where do babies come from? It's talking about puberty. And they're like, oh, yeah, 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 I already talked about puberty. And I'm like, oh, what'd you say?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, puberty is when your body changes and it's going to become an adult. I'm like, okay, well, there's a few
Yes.
more things we got to talk about when it
Yeah.
comes to puberty. So, how do we dispel this myth for parents that, especially with girls, they think, okay, puberty's here when your first period comes and then it's over,
Yeah.
basically. And then, yeah, how do we dispel that myth?
Yeah, such a great question. And I agree. I see that all the time too, right? Puberty, it's so the hyperfixation is the period.
Yes.
But if we really zoom out, there are so many other changes. And I like to start the conversation when she first develops breast buds, knowing that that is the first physical sign of puberty for most girls. And the reason that I also really like to back it up and have conversations that early is because when she first develops breast buds, it's usually about 2 to 2.5 years before she gets her first period.
Mm.
So it also creates a bit of a runway for us to really time these conversations. Because when she's, let's say, 9 years old, developing breast buds, she's probably not ready to know every single detail about her first period. It's a little bit too soon and it's a little bit too overwhelming.
Mhm.
But what we know is that, okay, she developed breast buds. She's now in stage 2 of puberty. What's coming next? Pubic hair. Okay, what's after that? Vaginal discharge. Okay, what's after that? Then her period. And so when we start the conversation that early, we can time those conversations in a way that is so much less overwhelming, right? Then, okay, here's all the information you need, and that's that. I always say, and I'm sure it's the same with the way that you educate parents, is these conversations are ongoing, right? They're not one and done.
Right.
They start here and they evolve and they change. But if we really want kids to come to us with their questions about their body and later on questions about sex and all of those topics, I really believe that it starts here. I really believe it starts in puberty, creating that safety and connection that you're willing to go there. You're willing to talk about vaginal discharge and the things that nobody is talking about, right? Then she knows that you are that safe space. So, and I always say to parents too, do it awkward. Just do it. It doesn't need to be perfect, right? She's not expecting perfection. It's okay if it's weird. She feels weird too, right?
Yeah.
But don't let that be the thing that stops you, right? Because we might feel a little uncomfortable talking about this, but if not you, then who, right? Where
Right.
else is she getting this information? It's so important that it comes from us and not the internet or her peers or TikTok, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
many other sources, and parents really are the best source to have this conversation.
For sure. I sometimes, as a mom, as an educator, as someone who's always constantly, helping other parents, I
Mhm.
test these little things out on my own kids. I'm like, okay, let's see how this goes or how
Love
this one works and whatnot. And one of the things is I always started talking about periods, what a period is, from a very early age. It's something that's okay to talk about. You don't have to
Mhm.
hide anything in the home
Yeah.
or at school. You can tell the teachers, everyone knows that this happens,
Mhm.
and it's not something to hide. And I think that was different for maybe you and me growing up, where I felt like they talked about, I remember the ads for like discreet tampons
Mhm.
and just, like nobody has to know. Do you see
Yep.
that changing in your practice and with the tweens that you work with?
I do. I do. I think there is more openness overall when it comes to these conversations. And yeah, it's funny when you even like, discreet, like all of the messaging that we received, right? And even thinking back, this is something a lot of parents have brought up is, even like ads on TV for pads or tampons, and they use this blue liquid, right? Like we can't even show the color red,
Yeah.
right? Like on
Except
TV.
when
And
someone is dying, we can show like
right.
red blood
Yeah,
everywhere.
right.
Yeah.
It's like, and it becomes almost like a confusing thing for girls too, where it's then they don't know, right? Like they don't know all the pieces and they don't really understand how much they should bleed, right? They just see this blue liquid and they see girls dancing on TV while they have a tampon in, right? And it's still I think there's still a lot of mystery when it comes to exactly what a period is and how much blood you should lose. And, I always say that puberty has bad PR, right? We only ever hear the negative things about periods, right? Like, oh, it'll be extremely painful. And a
Mm.
lot of girls think that. And so even when I'm educating them, I say, some mild discomfort is normal, but if you're in severe pain, like let's talk more about that. You don't have to live like that. And that's really surprising to girls and to their parents as well. So there's still, I think, so much unknown when it comes to these conversations. But I do think we're moving in the right direction. There is more openness. And I think part of that is our generation feels more comfortable talking about these things with our social circles and healthcare providers. And so we're getting to learn a lot more as well that we can pass on to that next generation. Because for a long time, it was you get your period, nobody says anything, we just move on, right? There was so much silence there.
For sure, for sure. And I think you hit it on the head. Like my mom's mom, my grandmother, I'm sure, like culturally speaking, when you were on your period, you couldn't help with anything, like
Mhm.
especially if there was a religious ceremony going on, you couldn't touch it. You were considered unclean and things like that. And then, when it came to me, my mom was like, that's really outdated thinking.
Mhm.
But around your grandmother, we're going to still do it that way, but at home where I don't think that's necessary. So I do see like the generational shift,
Mhm.
but it does come with education, right? It
Mhm.
does come with, why did we do this? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can we do something better for our kids nowadays? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even how we can reframe that. So I often talk too about chatting with your daughter about how you want to celebrate her first period, right? And it can be anything. It can be something really small, whatever she feels comfortable with. But I think that's a great way to just shift the narrative, right? It doesn't have to be this thing that we dread, right?
Mm.
We control that narrative, right? And so what if we can replace that with something that celebrates her and her changing body and wow, look at how things are changing for you and that's great and this is a sign of good health, right?
That's
And
a good
so
point.
yeah, the
Yeah.
more that we can shift that, the more that it can change her perspective on this natural healthy part of growing up.
I like this. I'm already excited for Generation Alpha to grow up and become parents themselves and to
Mhm.
keep all of this positivity around puberty and communication and healthy sexuality all around moving
Absolutely.
forward. Oh, Dr. Tara, this has been, I swear 20 minutes goes by
So
so
quick.
fast.
Yeah.
But this has been really wonderful. Can you please tell folks how they can get in touch with you if they want to join your Empowered Parent and Tween program? If they want to follow you on social media, let folks know.
Absolutely. So you can get in touch with me on Instagram. I'm active on there. I'm at Dr. period Tara Ruana, so just my first and last name. And my I have a course that's coming out actually in August, and it's a self-paced parent and daughter puberty education program. So stay tuned for more details about that. I'm really excited for that. We'll be going through all of the topics, everything to do with puberty, mental health, breast development, periods, all the things, all the questions that you have. So stay
This might be
tuned.
at the perfect time for me
Yeah.
to do this with my little one. I can't
Hmm.
believe she's growing up so fast. They always say that, like when they're babies, they're like, "Oh my God, they're going to grow up so fast," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"No, they're not. Like I am
Yeah,
exhausted. Like
totally.
she won't grow at all." And then all of a sudden, we're like almost a decade in, and I'm like, "Oh, let's go back a little bit. This went
Yeah,
way too fast."
totally. Where'd the time go, right?
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I will link all of that in the description. I will, so you can quickly find Dr. Tara, start following her. Great information. Thank you so much for being here. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you sharing your wealth of information.
Oh, well, thank you. This was so much fun. I really appreciate it.